Welcome to Afterthoughts, the space where we discuss, examine, and apply some of the concepts from the Sunday message. Today, we're joined by Gail, Ray, and Steph. Welcome, guys, and thanks for joining us. Now, we're going to be stepping through the third and final part of our Joy in Sorrow series. In the message this week, we looked at three key questions. What are the reasons we grapple with suffering? How does Scripture inform our expectations of God during difficult seasons in life? And what are our options for responding to God in those tough moments? So one of the claims in the message was that being a follower of Jesus really involves having a relationship with God. So our first question is that how you describe your experience of being a Christian? And if so, what impact has pain and suffering had on that relationship?
Yes, definitely. My relationship with Jesus my connection with him is definitely a relationship. And it's like all relationships, it goes through many different phases and very much is affected by the things that happen to me in my life. But it's a relationship which is always unfolding and which I find gets better and better over the years. No doubt about that. He calls me to follow him, but he also calls me to work with him in relationship and to just delight in all the benefits that there are involved in that. There are times when, particularly during the most difficult times in my life, when he hasn't seemed all that close, when he's almost seemed absent. I very clearly remember the time that I was diagnosed with cancer for the second time, when it was only, I was still only quite young. And I was so devastated that it had come back. And I remember I sat down after I'd talked to all the children and they'd all gone to bed. And I thought, now, look, what I need to do is read the Bible because I need that sense that Jesus is with me. And I just couldn't. The Bible said nothing to me. He was nowhere. And I remember I picked the Bible up and threw it across the room. I was just so devastated. And it tore a hole in the blind. And I never mended that hole because it was always a reminder to me of that time when I had felt so far from him, because that closeness came back, of course, in no time during that difficult time and afterwards. I struggled with my relationship with him when Peter came into my life and when we had got serious and we were talking about getting married. And I just realised through the 15 years that I was a single parent that my relationship with Jesus had been a tangible thing. It had been so close. He'd been such a real partner to me and my guide with bringing up the children, because I had needed him so much, and my comfort, and I'd always talked everything over with him and he was right there with me so much, so often. And I remember I said to Peter, how is this going to work? Because I feel like I've already got a partner and, I'm taking you on board. And he said, it's okay. We will love him together. And that's been a great help to me, that my relationship with Jesus has shifted during this new marriage, but it's got better because we do it together.
So Gail is the wise sage when it comes to this, obviously. My walk with God has been quite different. I have much less experience than Gail. But I kind of feel like God's a bit like that super keen, eager friend that I had from high school who, when I went to into my first class at university, I thought, oh, I'm like rid of that friend. And then I got there and she was there. And then I went to the next class and she was still there. And she ended up becoming like my best friend. And I think that's totally what's happened with me and God. I think he's just been unrelenting in his love and grace and forgiveness and compassion and closeness to me. And it's incredibly humbling to just know how he's pursued me unrelentingly over the years. And I find, for me, I'm so weary of sounding trite, but I've just tasted something so good of God in hardship that just can't be paralleled with anything. And I actually had to ask myself, thinking about this, like, would I take back the hardship so that would I try and undo the hardship so that I didn't have to experience it if I was given that choice, but then I'd like lose this depth of relationship. And I honestly don't think I would. I don't think I would trade the junk that life has thrown because I've come to taste something. There's this amazing quote that anybody who knows me will know that I say that I don't even know who said it. It was probably C.S. Lewis, because he normally does all good stuff. But it says, in the cellar of suffering are some of God's choicest wines. And that has just been totally my journey with God, that in the hardship, I've tasted just the best that this relationship has to offer. It has pushed me into a space of trust and submission that I have never been comfortable with, but that has just been a richness and a depth that I wouldn't trade for anything. So probably for me, I'm really grateful for hardship. I don't want more of it. Let me be clear. I'm not eagerly looking for more, though I probably should be. But I've really known God just as closer than a brother and closer than anybody in hardship, as he sits on the floor with you when you're sobbing. He's the only friend that just doesn't ever leave you by yourself, which is just such a gift.
And I think that it hits the nail on the head in terms of what God is able to actually give us in that place of suffering, and the richness that he's able to bring about in those experiences. And it cuts across, I think, that cultural default that we have, which is to just sort of assume that all pain is bad, and we're sort of trying to shape our lives for convenience and whatnot. But yeah, it's very moving to hear how profound those experiences have been.
I didn't always think, I guess, I had a relationship with Jesus. I think when I first became a Christian, it was still quite a new concept to me. I think it was always that I saw Jesus or God as someone just there, and I never knew, I guess, how to access a relationship. I never knew that I could have a relationship with Jesus, and I think that was something that will always continue to be a journey. The main question that I really struggled with quite early on was like where suffering and pain like sits in the world, and how I go about in my life and how that impacts the people in my life, whether they're Christian or not Christian, because I find that topic is really hard sometimes to discuss when family members are going through something really tough, and how my journey as a Christian and how my relationship with God impacts that, and how I explain that to a lot of people. So I think I struggled quite a lot with that quite early in my Christian journey, and I guess it wasn't really until reading the Bible more and going really deep into what that looks like in trusting in a relationship with Jesus before I really knew that relationship was something that I could rely on. And look, I still struggle with it every day. Like, I think it's just different seasons where you really trust God in your suffering and pain, but sometimes you also really question where that sits in your life. So I work as a social worker, and I see a lot of, broken homes and a lot of, I guess, sin in the world. And sometimes I still struggle every day to see how that fits into God's plan, or how that fits into people's lives. And I think that's something that I struggle with quite a lot, and something that I continually try to give back to God. And, and I wouldn't have that opportunity if I didn't have a relationship with him.
In the message, we looked at Romans chapter 5 to see how God uses suffering to provide us with that opportunity to grow and develop, something that we've sort of touched on already in our conversation so far. I was wondering if anybody has some specific examples of ways that you feel like God has grown you through challenging life seasons.
Yeah, after I became a Christian, I think one of the greatest things that I understood very quickly was that God has a plan for my life. And like, that concept had never occurred to me before. But I found that very reassuring, because when I became a Christian, my life was kind of in tatters in different ways. I was in a marriage that was falling apart, and I had 3 little children. And I felt that whatever happened in my future, because I had no idea what would happen sooner and later, I felt great security in that I had now plugged into a plan for my life that had always been there. And that plan was made by someone infinitely greater than me. Lining that up with the fruits of the Spirit, as I learned about the fruits of the Spirit, I realised that the two converge, that as my character is moulded, and as the Holy Spirit, Jesus in me, goes to work, he will work the fruits of the Spirit. He'll change my character to suit the circumstances that are coming and that do come. And not only will he do that, but he'll grow that character, that Christian character, through the circumstances. And I think when I look back now over, well, I guess I've had 4 cancer battles, and what I live with now is ongoing challenge. I don't call it suffering, but the last cancer has left me with physical problems that I will have all my life. You know, I'm in and out of hospital quite a bit. But I think that what I've grown in is resilience and in peace and in things like having a sense of wonder. Like I'm so amazed to even be here. Every day I'm amazed to be alive. And what that does for you is gives you gratitude. It means that I have a grateful and positive attitude to life. And I see that as a whole process of growing through suffering. I mean, I wouldn't have chosen the things that have happened to me for a minute, but I can just see so much in terms of character that I haven't done that has emerged through them, and things that I enjoy. Like I love having a sense of wonder. I don't ever want to lose it. And I love having a grateful heart. I'm so grateful. Every day I'm just amazed, not just to be here, but to be married to a wonderful person and to have wonderful kids. They've emerged from it so strong and things like that. I'm always finding things to be grateful for. And I think that's just, it's kind of an amazing positive that can come out of, well, in terms of growth, that can come out of many hard years, which is unique, I think, to Christians. It's, yeah, it doesn't happen normally.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think for me, it's having that trust regardless of what I'm going through, you know, whether it's good or bad. And I guess praying to God and constantly bringing it to him and making sure, I guess, you know, when I'm in that suffering that, you know, I think it's very easy to point fingers or having like blaming or just giving it on to someone else. And I think that's something that I will continue to struggle with always. And I think that's something that, yeah, like that praying and constantly going to God and I guess even being before him and making sure that, yeah, my heart is in the right place and trusting him in the plan that he has and, you know, without, I guess, straying from what he has already provided in my life, I think is something that I hold quite fast to.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Just really humbled that you would share so much of yourselves with us this evening. Really appreciated that and your generosity with your time as well. So thanks everyone for joining us. This has been Afterthoughts. Special thank you to Gail, Ray and Steph. And if you missed the Sunday message, please check it out on our YouTube or podcast channels, and we'll see you guys soon.